Hello, this is Justin Fitzpatrick, and this is my video presentation on ADS-B and aviation mobile apps. ADS-B is a technology that stands for Automatic Dependent Surveillance Broadcast, and we'll go through some of the overview right here. We're going to talk about some of the background of what Datalink technologies are and what they entail. Some of the ADS-B requirements that are being introduced in the Federal Aviation Administration, and the industry response and some of the advances. So, what the heck is Datalink? It sounds really cool, and it sounds like it could be anything, a link that provides data. Well, Datalink specifically is a method that's come about in about the last, 30, 40 years, by which we take analog radio signals on a variety of frequencies and media, and we transmit what will be interpreted as digital signals with the transmitters and receivers. One of those is called ACARS, the Aircraft Communication Addressing and Reporting System. And I know this is a bit of an eye chart, but this diagram basically shows that we have ground hardware. We have ground earth stations which transmit, and we actually also have Inmarsat Iridium satellites, so what we would call SATCOM. And this is the way that probably almost all commercial airliners communicate these days. Some of what we're talking about, I should have mentioned, is going to be cited in my references page, which is the last page. And a lot of this I'm going to cite myself as a subject matter expert. I've got about 3,000 hours flying heavy airplanes, airline transport pilot rating, and I'm familiar with most of what I'm speaking about. When I'm not, that will be where I've gone to the references page. So this is ACARS. Basically, if you think of the way airplanes communicate at a very basic level, you have a line of sight radios, and you can do most of what you need to do with a line of sight radio, either VHF, very high frequency, UHF, ultra high frequency, or HF high frequency, which is a long range, very hard to listen to radio. And so, say I'm flying my aircraft and I get to 6,000 feet, I level off, I talk to approach control, and approach control tells me, hey, you have weather in front of you. It's 20 miles, an area of moderate to severe convective turbulence. Okay, well, that's great. I have spoken to somebody with whom I share a line of sight, and using an analog radio signal with a regular control head and antenna, I've gotten information across. Now, ACARS, if you look on this picture to the top left, you have a screen. And this screen is carrying information that goes beyond the line of sight using satellite technology and ground stations, and they will transmit, and by they I mean the company usually will transmit your flight plan, the weather at your destination, any notices to airmen, and I don't have to be within line of sight. So I could be 10 hours out from, say, landing in Paris, and I will get from a ground station in maybe Atlanta all of the information I need that I would normally be using my radio for. And that's what ACARS is. This is called cell call. Cell call is a digital communication format that is used heavily when we're doing ocean crossings. So cell call allows me to basically block out all transmissions, and they'll code a transmission with a digital signature that says, hey, aircraft such and such, I'm trying to talk to you. And then I'll pop up my radio and we'll talk. For the C-130 community, the way I grew up, you just have to listen to HF for 7 straight hours, and it's awful, and the new guy has to do it. This is a slightly more advanced version of the technology, which borders more on what I'm interested in. And this is, I pulled this picture off of, I want to say, Honeywell. I think it was Honeywell. But this is a multifunction display out of an A-10 attack aircraft. We're still talking about Datalink. In this case, the signals would be encrypted and much harder to crack. But these items right here, this circle, this circle, this circle, this diamond, these are what we call tracks. And a track is an item, I say an item, we would say maybe a player somewhere in this battle scheme that is using ADS-B or a tactical data link network, is transmitting its position, is transmitting information about its movement, say its altitude, its airspeed. And some of the programs that use this capability would be something called Link 16, might be called TADL for Tactical Air Data Link, or saddle for saddle air data, strategic air data link, or situational air data link. There are many, many different programs and many versions of this, but the key feature is the same. I've used an analog radio wave to transmit digital data, and once I can do that, I can transmit anything I want, and the military has used this to great effectiveness. So, military applications. I have personal experience using this for ground target tracking as a gunship pilot in a past life. So, ground target tracking, I made sure this is an actual picture of actual Taliban, so no, no stereotypes here. That's really what we're talking about. One example is if I am in a gunship and I have a flight of A-10s, they're also using tactical data link. I can say, hey, I am engaged over on the west side of this village. On the east side of this village, I have someone running away, say, with an RPG. I need you to watch him. I'm going to get back to him in 5 minutes. That other aircraft, where his sensor is pointed, will show me where this guy is. Now, my sensor's not there. His is, and he is transmitting to me through a tactical data link. So when I'm done on the west side, I will shift my sensors over, what we say is meld. I will meld my sensor to his, and if I have to engage that target, I will. Air-to-air engagement, it's really an interesting thing we've done here. If you study this, you may be familiar with the term BVR, Beyond Visual Range. So what's on this diagram isn't important, it just looked cool. So the BVR detection surpasses the limitation of a fighter aircraft's radar range. In the old days, you have a radar, it goes out, say, 100 miles. Anybody at 200 miles, you're not going to know they're there. Until they're within 100 miles, you're not going to know. So it became a game of who's got the best radar, who's got the best features in that radar. Can't go into that too much, but basically, all the hardware, the competition was on the aircraft. Well, now, because of Datalink, I can have a plane orbiting at 30,000 feet, watching the entire ground situation and feeding that information to the various fighter aircraft, and this is a really big deal on the F-22 and the F-35. It's really where they make their money, and actually to some legacy fighters as well. So they're going to feed that information to the aircraft, and really importantly, they're going to feed it to the missiles. That aircraft does not have to see the other plane, even on radar, to know where they are. And since the missile has the same capability, we have what's called a beyond visual range engagement. Hey, I trust you. I hit the I believe button. He's out there. Fox 1. Missile will fly out to its max range. If it has to, it'll engage a target. And when we do that, we are really shortening our command and control loop. And Datalink is the reason for that. Now here, air defense, I am maybe hanging up on this, but I think it's cool, so hopefully you think it's cool. This is the Iron Dome, the Kipat Barzel in Israel. And I've actually gotten to drive by one of these. This is about what it looks like. And this is the brand new cutting edge air defense technology in the Middle East right now. The Iron Dome uses Datalink from a central processor, I am told, so don't quote me on that, but I am told that's what it uses. There's only 12 in the country. They move them around, but no matter where they are or where they're placed, they are being fed digital data from a central surveillance point. So they don't have to have the radar that catches whatever projectile is incoming to engage it. And then when the missile gets closer to what it's trying to hit, it will start engaging it on its own. It's a very accurate cutting-edge system. So as the industry does, we said, hey, this is cool. Let's make some money. And we decided to apply this technology to general aviation. And the gorilla in the room, basically a monopoly, unofficial monopoly, 4Flight. 4Flight LLC is the producer of this mobile app called 4Flight EFB, for Electronic Flight Bag. And 4Flight EFB is the most massive, accessible revolution for general and even civil and even military aviation in the last 20 years, probably. So you have on the right side here the Stratus antenna. It talks, or at least the 2S version, talked to only the Stratus antenna made by Appareo. And Appareo teamed with 4Flight, and they will only talk to each other. So great marketing move. If you buy one, you've got to buy the other. But most people are happy. This is the Sentry ADS-B antenna, and it is made by 4Flight, I believe. And this will operate off any number of ground stations, any number of satellites. and then this is a display right here. Now, the two important things to remember: ADS-B is a part of the FAA's Next Gen initiative. So 2020, they want to stop using radar control by radar controllers, and they want to have position reporting done by ADS-B. And so they have talked, I don't know if they've talked to every approach control agency, but they've already implemented some of this over the Gulf of Mexico. So ADS-B will be the primary source of control. Now, I keep saying ADS-B, Automatic Dependent Surveillance Broadcast. We know now what Datalink is. Well, what is ADS-B? ADS-B is just another type of data link. It has TISB, which is Traffic Information Service Broadcast, and Flight Information Service Broadcast, which is FISB. And you can have in, out. Basically, the ADS-B for the Stratus or any of the ForeFlight is going to be in only, but all aircraft are going to have in and out by 2020. I want to show you what makes this cool, because maybe it's only cool to me. When I look at this electronic flight bag, you'll notice the real-time weather display. Red's not good, ever, so you know that's a bad storm up ahead. Now, in a normal, conventional sense, I would be flying my airplane, I would turn on my weather radar, maybe it goes out to 200 miles, I look 200 miles. I don't see anything. Well, they didn't tell me there was anything out there, and I don't see anything on the radar, so I've got 200 miles that I know I'm safe. Well, with this, I am updating real-time weather all along the route of flight, the entire route of flight. So I could be 6 hours away from running into a thunderstorm, and with one swipe, I see it, and I can reroute way ahead of time, and that saves fuel, it saves lives, ultimately. And it saves a lot of confusion, because last-minute diverting around a storm, especially on a radar, is a very harrowing maneuver in some situations. I've been there, and it's not fun. The moving map, this is just teaming with GPS. So the Stratus antenna for this program would send a GPS or integrate a GPS signal as well. Sorry. And so it puts me a little blue airplane, which seems very elementary, but it's a really big deal, because in aviation, knowing where you are is half the battle half the time. This took all the guesswork out of it. Every recreational, general aviation, commercial, and military pilot knows exactly where he is at all time. And then the TISB, the Traffic Information System we talked about, hard to see, but these little blue triangles all represent aircraft. And with the touch of a screen, I can pull up that aircraft's call sign if need be, altitude, airspeed, and this shows me, with probably the highest resolution of any tool in the commercial industry right now, this shows me exactly where everybody is long before they become a conflict. Everything you're seeing these arrows pointing to is something that kills people. It kills people. It kills not only pilots in general aviation, but passengers in commercial and airline aviation. For such a simple sounding system, it is incredibly, incredibly revolutionary. We have our copycats. We have this Avara ADS-B, not quite as flashy as ForeFlight. And then on the right side, you have an application that's in wide use through the Air Force called Arrow. It's made by the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, or NGA. And they got their government people to work on it and made an application that is just about impossible to use, and everyone hates it, because that's what you would expect from the government. So ForeFlight has actually been allowed by regulation for American Air Force pilots, National Guard pilots, and all the rest. And it's really turned out to be a huge, huge cost savings, and really raised the situational awareness and safety margins. So that's, well, I went a little long, but I guess I'll take the hit on that one. That is basically where mobile applications stemming from Datalink and ADS-B have taken us. They are advancing rapidly at the speed of heat. You wouldn't believe the difference even from 3 years ago to today. And obviously everybody's got to be updated by 2020. So I would expect that the updates are going to keep coming. But I hope you have enjoyed this presentation and found it entertaining and informative. Here is my reference page. Feel free to pause it and stare in awe. And there we go. I hope you've enjoyed. Thank you for listening.